All right, so we finished discussing Ajax, and for the most part, that brings us to the end of most of the major topics that we're going to cover in the class. So you now have most of the tools, most of the fundamental knowledge at least, that you would need to build most fully functioning modern web applications. So from here on out, we're only going to be introducing some topics that I would consider maybe a little bit more either kind of side topics that are not quite as fundamental but still useful, little tools to use, or maybe even some topics like the one we're talking about today that are a little bit newer and a little bit more advanced, but something that I still want you to be aware of and something that you'll at least have to conceptually understand for the final exam. So this next topic we're going to talk about is WebSockets, the topic you went through in your Zybook for today. And I think they did a pretty good job of explaining what WebSockets are. Oh, just lost my diagram here. Let's see if we'll... Just going to have to draw this again. So I think, again, that they did a pretty good job in the Zybook of explaining what WebSockets are all about. But I think there was one thing that they didn't explain so well. So I want to explain that now. So WebSockets are, in the end, a different technology than HTTP. And the big difference between WebSockets versus HTTP is that in HTTP, we always have a client initiate a request to a server. So everything we've done up until now, whether it was Ajax or traditional requesting an HTML page, has always involved the client initializing a request. So everything, we've always drawn our picture. Client sends a request, server sends a response, right? And that response can sometimes be an entire HTML page. Sometimes, like in Ajax, it might be just a little piece of data. But either way, it's always a request is made from the client, a response is made from the server, and then that connection goes away. And if there's ever going to be any more communication between the client and the server, it's once again going to be initiated by the client. So now the client can make another request of the server, and the server sends back a response. It always works that way in HTTP. Request coming from the client, server is serving back the response. But that type of protocol, that type of communication works, while it works in most cases, doesn't work well for every situation. And so I want to look at the example that they brought up in your Zybook to talk about. It's a good example to explain where WebSockets come in and essentially how sometimes we actually want the server to be able to initiate the connection to the client. So the example they used in the Zybook was something like you have a Facebook page or an Instagram page. I'll just stick with Facebook, right? Where you've got Facebook loaded in your client over here, and you've got some whatever showing on your page. And now let's just say that one of your friends happens to upload a photo to the server. So this is kind of, let's pretend that somebody's got a phone over here. So this is another client, and it happens to be one of your Facebook friends. They take a picture in their phone, and then they upload that to Facebook. Now, what do we want to have happen? Ideally, we want the server to look at that picture and say, oh, let's see who all needs to see that. And we want the server to now initiate the connection and send that picture over to the client. But in HTTP, we have no way to do that because it's always the client has to initiate a request from the server. And the problem is the client doesn't have any way of knowing when a new picture has been uploaded that it wants to see. So we've got a few options for how we could, using HTTP, how could we actually get this client to update, to now show that picture. So this picture has been sent to the server, picture is sitting over here on the server, and now we want that picture to appear over here. Well, how are we going to get that to happen? Well, we've got a few options. Number one, we could actually have the user make a request. So we could have something like a little button on the page, actually up here on the Facebook page that says, refresh photos or something like that. Right? And only when that button is clicked okay, is a response, or excuse me, is a request made to the server to say, are there any new photos? And if there are, download the photo. So that's one way we could do it, but that's a pain, right? The user has to click refresh photos every time they want to check to see if there are any new photos. Most of the time there aren't going to be new photos, okay? And not only that, but they again have no idea when this is coming in. So they might not wait, or they might not click that button for 15 or 20 minutes. And that photo's been sitting there for 15 or 20 minutes. And so they didn't get the photo instantaneously, right? They didn't get an update instantaneously. So a better solution that is often used is called polling. That was the one that was introduced in your Zybook section. And what that means is you basically use a JavaScript timer to send the request every so often, maybe every couple of minutes. So what happens is, erase this photo, again, every couple of minutes, a request is sent that basically says, are there any new photos that for me to look at, or any updates to my page I should get? Maybe messages, and then a response comes back. And sometimes there will be some new update that the server has to send, and it'll send a new photo or a new message or something. But many times there won't be anything. So if we set that timer to check every minute or something like that, go send a request every minute, send a request to the server, send a request to the server, a good percentage of the time, there's actually not going to be any updates for you and nothing's going to come back. So that's a little bit wasteful, right? You're using up bandwidth. Every time you send a message across the internet, you're using up your bandwidth. And if most of the time you're not getting anything back, that's just a waste. And not only that, it's still not instantaneous, right? So you're sending that request, and maybe there's nothing new there, and then you're not going to send another request for another couple of minutes or something like that. Well, maybe someone has uploaded a photo, right after you sent the last request, and then you don't send a new request for 2 more minutes, so you don't see that photo for 2 minutes. So there's a delay. It's not instantaneous updates. Now, maybe that's not a big deal. In most cases, probably getting a photo every couple minutes, new photo is fine. But there are a lot of applications where that wouldn't be so great, and one of those is more like messaging, right? So when one person posts a message that you're supposed to receive, you don't want to get it only every 2 minutes. You'd like to see that message instantaneously, or there's lots of other things where you really want to see updates instantaneously. So polling and doing updates every couple minutes, or in other words, sending new requests for updates every couple minutes, is still not an ideal solution. Okay, it's not instantaneous. It won't get instantaneous updates, and it uses bandwidth. Okay, it keeps using up bandwidth even if there's nothing that's coming back. So that brings us to our third option, which is WebSockets. So let's talk next about what that's really all about.